Welcome to the Dairy News and Views podcast, a production of the Iowa State University Extension and Outreach Dairy Team. Our podcast covers current educational, research, and industry tools available for your operation to manage healthy cows and calves while producing the highest quality dairy products.
Thanks for joining us today on Dairy News and Views from the ISU Dairy Team. I'm Fred Hall, Northwest Iowa Dairy Field Specialist, and I'm here today with my colleague Jen Bentley, the Northeast Iowa Dairy Field Specialist, as we discuss today's topic of labor and the ways to help retain talented workers in the dairy industry. Welcome back to the podcast, Jen.
Well, thanks for having me, Fred, and I'm happy to share some information we have today on some programming that we've been working on. So glad to be back on.
We also have Jorge Delgado, an Alltech on-farm specialist who recently collaborated with our dairy team and the University of Nebraska Dairy Extension to develop an online bilingual milker training program. Welcome to our podcast, Jorge. And before we get into our topic of discussion today, give our audience an introduction of yourself and what you do with Alltech.
Yes, thank you, Fred, and thank you, Jen, for the opportunity. As Jen said, we're going to share some exciting information today about the bilingual training program that we developed together. In my role with Alltech, what I do is I support the people doing sales for Alltech for any dairy farms where farms are utilizing Alltech technology. What we do, or I do in my role, is we support the labor force by doing training, by doing coaching, mentoring the labor force, and also providing education in the dairy industry as a speaker related to topics about labor management.
You know, out here in Northwest Iowa, our competitors for labor aren't always other farms. We have harvest centers. We have a lot of industry here. On my way into work, I see the sign for Seaboard that says, $2,500 sign-on bonus. What do you see as the most important issues and challenges facing our dairy industry in regard to labor?
Yeah, Fred, I think you nailed it right on the head there. Definitely some competition as far as our labor pool. And, we're trying to produce high quality milk and still take overall care and health of our animals. And we want to remain profitable. That's a major goal for our producers, is producing high quality milk and remaining profitable. But we know that milking is one of the most labor intense areas on the farm and probably one of the most challenging places to retain employees. If you take a look across all of agriculture, our labor pool is shrinking. And so it's making it even more important than ever to make or find ways to retain our talented employees a priority on the farm. So Jorge, what are you seeing out there?
I think you're right, Jen, especially on the comment that Fred just made, like when Fred was mentioning about, the signing bonuses, for example. The industry that we're competing to is not necessarily other agricultural business, but is other commercial businesses. And those businesses, they have the potential and the resources to offer more benefits than we offer in agriculture. So that is the main challenge for agriculture, to retain these workers. So in order to compete with other businesses, we have to be more formal in agriculture. Yes, we know that the things that we can control, like benefits and bonuses, are really hard for agriculture. But the things that we can control, it will be like things like to create a more formal place for these guys to work at, where there is feedback, there is more reviews, there is a culture of retention, there's a culture of connection. So these guys, they can bond with managers, owners, other workers, and of course make these guys relevant. One of the things that we lack, I think, in our industry is that many of these workers, they come and work in dairies in this case, and they don't understand what they do. And what they do is something very, very important, which is feed this nation, not only feed their families and my family, but feed the entire country and many other countries. So I think we have to do a better job on letting these guys know that these guys are very, very relevant to this industry, their industry, and to this country, so they can have a buy-in and really stay with us and work longer in the dairy industry.
To continue on that discussion of retaining talent, what's the number one challenge facing our dairy industry? And why do you think that's the case?
Well, Fred, that's probably, a repeat of some of our comments from the above question. We're competing with other businesses. We know that agriculture, and particularly with dairy, that hours can be long, and oftentimes working conditions can become a factor. So you think of some of our winter and summertime conditions, if we're working outside or handling both inside and outside work, some of those can get kind of long. Pay also starts to become a factor. So if you start to combine all of those factors together, you can really see how that pool of potential workers actually starts to shrink for agriculture.
And I think this is historical. I think in the dairy industry, or maybe in agriculture in general, I think we are reactive. We are not proactive, and especially with historically we've had, like Jennifer mentioned before, that pool is shrinking, but that pool wasn't not shrinking before. It was a big pool where they could pull resources from, especially from labor. And that pool was so big, people was just showing up on the doors and asking for jobs at the dairies, that the dairies didn't have the opportunity or to be aware of creating a culture thinking in the future. What's happening right now, where that pool is shrinking, and now we don't have the culture of retention. So I think it's us as an industry try to be proactive and not reactive, and planning for retention. That pool is shrinking. Those guys are not showing up anymore and just looking for jobs. We have to think differently. We have to attract those employees. We have to create a culture of feedback, communication, safety, protection, bonding, etc. And as Jennifer says, everything is related to what we answered before too.
Jorge, you made a great comment a little bit ago on sometimes the people doing the work don't understand the importance or why they do things the way they're being asked to do. I value the need for education. I know you guys do. What are some of the approaches we should be considering when providing education to our dairy farm workers?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think many of us will just focus on training these guys onto the whys and hows, but we don't explain really to these guys, how important they are in this industry. I think we should stop looking for workers. We need to start, looking for partners. And I think these partners, what they want, it's they want to bond with us, and they want to be part of this business, this dairy industry. And one of the things that we can do to make these guys part of this industry is to provide education. Education provides retention. One of the drivers that I always talk in several places is that we all have different drivers. The driver to defend, the driver to bond, the driver to comprehend. And one of these drivers that is a very extreme potential for these guys is the drive to comprehend. All of us, we are very curious about the things that we do, how we do it, why we do it. We like to learn. That's something that is natural for all humans. And there's no deception for these guys. These guys, they also want to comprehend. These guys, they also want to learn. So I think there's a huge opportunity for us as an industry, in the dairy industry, to create platforms where these guys, they can have access to these tools, and they can start learning and comprehending things and being part of the industry. And when we talk about tools for learning, we have to be very visual, and we have to also talk to their level, and we also have to recognize that these guys are taking these educational programs. So I think we have to consider many things on the educational side of ways, so these guys, they can come to the industry and see that we want to teach.
Yeah, Jorge, I like your comment about making them partners. I feel like, even in my own extension work, Fred, you're my partner in my work, and we should do that the same on dairy farms too. And I really think that starts on day one of somebody starting a new job. As I think about my career in extension, we have an orientation process where expectations are laid out. We have an annual review with supervisors that help us, learn about positive actions, maybe address concerns, and also talk about future goals. So it gives us something to work towards in in our future career of our job. And we're also providing that opportunity for continuing education. So we actually become lifelong learners in our job. And I think we need to take that mentality into the dairy industry too, and make those partners or employees lifelong learners in their jobs as well. And so getting them started on that first day, allowing them to become lifelong learners, allowing them to feel confident in their abilities and work towards those future goals in their positions. I think that really helps with the retention process and really gives them a sense of belonging of why they're there and makes them feel part of the teams.
Well, we're seeing how important training and education is, but also keeping morale up amongst employees is pretty important. We know that coming in with a positive attitude will improve work conditions, and the cows sense it too. What are some of the ways you've seen dairy farms keep morale up with their employees?
Fred, you probably get a sense or a vibe when you drive into a dairy farm or you start visiting with the farm manager. You either get a positive vibe or a negative vibe just in talking to those people. So, keeping morale up starts with the farm itself. How do they present themselves and how do they effectively communicate with dairy farm workers, other people that are coming to the farm. And, to most dairy farm employees start to become part of the family, and we show those people with signs of respect. So how do we build that morale inside the barn as well as outside of the barn? So things that we're doing outside of their daily work by offering that continuing education, things outside of the barn, providing clothing for our working conditions, making branded clothing so they feel that sense of ownership. Maybe we're offering some pizza parties or a meal in recognition of some good work that's being done. Those are all ways that we can, improve that morale overall and makes them have a sense of belonging there.
Yes, Jen, I think you are aligning the same kind of comments that I have, based on what Fred was asking about, what we've seen in other dairies. And I think, other dairies that they do this well, they keep it very simple. They don't micromanage the workers, but they tend to care a lot and not necessarily invading personal lives or being too emotional. But what they do is they ask a lot of questions. They are always reviewing employees, and not only just to review protocols or SOPs, because sometimes we tend too much to focus just on the whys and hows on the cows, but also we have to focus on the whys and the hows of the employees. And I think when Jen mentioned before about these reviews, I think we also have to continue to ask questions to these guys. So the continued feedback, and this can be done by reviews. Not a lot of the dairies, they do reviews. Very few, they do reviews. And this is the chance of these few dairies where they can really find, these answers to move the culture a needle up so the culture keeps improving. So, and also in these reviews, you are making also these workers part of your decision. So again, they become partners. And whenever you want to change something in the parlor or something about the cows, you need to ask these guys, you need to keep them involved. And I think the dairies that they do a good job, they keep the workers involved in these big decisions. Sometimes we leave these decisions just to managers and owners without, taking into the equation the workers, and they think they're going to be the ones, looking at the cows and milking these cows and working with the cows. Fred, you mentioned before, the cows will sense this. So we need to keep the workers involved into these conversations. And by doing that, you provide also information where they need training and safety, recognize these workers, respect, and keep the information very simple. That is the other thing. Sometimes we like to put so many information out there, so many benchmarks, so many SOPs, so many rules and regulations, and we tend to, disengage the employees. So we have to keep it easy and simple. One example that it comes to my mind is somatic cell count, for example. Many dairies, they build these graphics, in a daily basis, and people just lose, the interest in reading somatic cell count on a daily basis. I think we have to keep it simple. Just post something just monthly in their native language, explaining what a somatic cell count, so then people understand where is this coming from. So keep it very, very simple. So that is something dairies that they have success, they do.
Well, that leads us into a next topic of discussion as we introduce and talk about the training program that both of you have been working on quite extensively to provide a platform for employees who specifically work with milking cows. Explain what you've been doing and how this can be used by dairymen.
Sure, Fred. Well, as you know, our dairy team continues to do needs assessment with our producers, and oftentimes we ask about additional training for employees. And milking procedures and just overall milking practices came up as a priority of training for our dairy farm producers. And so as I was working with University of Nebraska Lincoln dairy team on a grant, this rose up as part of one of the ways that we could provide some training and provide some educational tools for those producers. And so that brought us to partnering with University of Nebraska, working with Jorge with Alltech and Iowa State University Extension and Outreach dairy team to develop some online trainings that could be accessed by both producers and employees who want to better train themselves to learn and understand the hows and whys of their job. You know, it was mentioned before that oftentimes we get focused on getting the job done, but taking a step back and helping people understand why they're doing certain procedures and how they're doing it and how that affects quality of the milk and the whole procedure. I think those are important things. And so we really tried to develop the training program around the hows and whys of doing their jobs. So this training that we developed, it is an online training. So an employee or dairy farm manager would log on to this online training, and within that training site, they're going to be able to walk through a series of 8 different learning modules about improving milk quality from inside and outside of the milking barn. And so each module includes short videos for understanding mastitis, udder health topics like teat evaluation, singeing udders, winter and cracked teats, how to evaluate milk quality using a CMT, properly collecting a milk sample, and learning that step-by-step process for the recommended milking procedure and why we do those procedures the way that we do. We also know that animal handling is important to milk quality, and so we have a few trainings on how to calmly handle both cows and fresh heifers to and from the milking parlor. And we also know that what happens outside the milking barn is important to milk quality. And so we have some videos we've implemented for this that include cleanliness of the water troughs, cleaning the alleys and the barns, the importance of feed, maintenance and cleanliness of free stalls, heat stress and sprinklers, and overall hoof health. So I really think these videos do an outstanding job of demonstrating on-farm practices to help emphasize key milking and management techniques. And so within each of these modules, then we have a quiz that's built into them that tests their knowledge at the end of each of these topic areas. Then they're able to receive a certificate of completion for each of these modules that they can print off and present to their employer as a recognition of their educational training. There's also accompanying resource materials that can be printed and used as trainings that can be posted maybe in a break room, training area, or as part of a farm's standard operating procedure. We also developed 2 animations. These animations really were to help explain in more detail and more visually the importance of the milking process. So the first one that we developed or created was somatic cells in milk. And this animation really helps the viewer understand how it affects the cow and can really tie that back into the importance of our milking protocols and overall cow hygiene. The second animation created is called From Food to Milk, and this helps the viewer understand the whole process of the importance of the cow's diet and keeping her healthy and how she converts that feed into milk, understanding why cows are such a powerhouse for creating milk. And so I think these 2 animations just really do a good job of visually understanding those 2 processes. And so all these modules are presented in Spanish with English subtitles. The quizzes are offered in both English and Spanish. And we also offer the Spanish quizzes with audio translation. So it's making it more accessible for people to easily interpret the information. And so Fred, I'll include with the show notes today the link to access that training site, but it is a free online training and it's available. You can go to go.iastate.edu/milker training. there you'll find all the instructions to access the site, as well as a promo video kind of explaining more in depth of what I've talked about here today of the different learning modules. So I really just encourage people to participate in this, share this with dairy farms that you know that could utilize this training. And so Jorge, do you have any final comments on just the overall program here?
Yeah, I think very well explained. One of the things that you mentioned, Jennifer, before is, like this education for anything, any business, and especially for dairy, it has to start on day zero. And sometimes we don't do a good job, for the training and providing information, especially technical information on day zero. We usually hire these personnel and then we send them to be trained by somebody else, and we miss the big opportunity. What this program is intended is to exactly cover that. It's very basic, it's very simple, and it will capture the attention of that audience that hasn't had the chance to get informed about cows and about how to move cows and about how to milk cows. It's very simple. So I think this program should be part of any onboarding program for any dairy. It is very simple, very engaging, very easy to understand, and I think the audience will be captivated by it.
As we look at the importance of this for employees, there's also an importance for the herd owners, because they can take this package when they move to the next dairy. Will they be able to say, I've had this training, and be of value to the new employee?
That is a great comment, Fred. And I think it's excellent. Jennifer mentioned about the printing the diplomas, as a way to recognize these guys. And not only they can take it to the other farm and say, look, I took these courses and I'm certified on this basic training. But also many of the feedback that we've had from these guys is that they also can take these diplomas back to their countries. So I think this is huge, Fred. That point is huge. I don't think it's only solving a problem here in the US, but it also can solve a problem in Latin America as well, where these guys, they come from. Many of these guys, they come here to break the cycle of poverty because of the lack of education. But if they can come here and get education and go back and share that information with their people in their countries, I think this is huge. It's huge.
Thank you for all the great information here today. And as we conclude, any last take-home messages you want to share with our listeners?
Sure, Fred. Well, I'll just summarize, this is just another tool in your toolbox to equip your employees to help retain and motivate them. So use these tools as a framework to build your own dairy farm worker toolbox as a way to motivate those employees, retain them, with the ultimate goal for the dairy operation to reduce turnover, increase employee efficiency, and overall dairy profitability. I think those will make some very good positive changes on the dairy farm.
Yeah, the last comment from me, Fred, is, as we go into seminars, into conferences, and we talk to producers or other colleagues in the industry, they're always asking and looking for these kind of information and resources. They always ask, hey, Jorge, hey, Jennifer, where can I find a video on YouTube? Hey, can I find information for training my dairy workers for my farm? And they can't find it. It is really hard. So based on that, this is why, institutions like you guys and us, we created these. So what I want to say to the audience out there, please use it. You guys are being asking for resources like this. Now it's out there. It's public. It's free. It's good. Please use it.
Thank you, Jen and Jorge, for joining us today and sharing this information. And thank you to our listeners, and we look forward to visiting with you on our next Dairy News and Views from ISU.
This institution is an equal opportunity provider. For the full non-discrimination statement or combination inquiries, go to www.extension.iastate.edu/diversity/EXT.